A very common theme in the Quran is Allah's absolute control over everything, even the choices of individual souls to believe in Him or reject Him. Now, this is a very controversial point, and there are numerous Muslims who will argue with me on this point and have been doing so in the ongoing series on the Quran that Hatun Tash and I are doing. The fact is that they say it is not Allah's absolute control over everything that decides whether someone will believe in Him or reject Him. That is up to the believer. And so the question is, do believers in Islam, according to Islam, have free will? That's the question. Chapter 2, verse 7 of the Quran says, Allah has sealed their hearing and their hearts, and over their eyes there is a covering. They will suffer an awful doom, as we have already heard about the doom quite a bit. Now, Allah has sealed their hearing and their hearts. A lot of Muslims will tell you that that means that Allah only seals the hearing and the hearts of people who have already rejected Him. The Tafsir al-Jalalain says of the unbelievers that Allah does not remove blessings from them until they exchange their good state for disobedience. So it seems as if from that the disobedience comes first, and then Allah punishes them. That the sinners, those who reject Allah, have only themselves to blame. And there are other passages that seem to support that. For example, chapter 6, verse 12, say, to whom does whatever is in the heavens and the earth belong? Say, to Allah. He has prescribed mercy for Himself. Why He needs mercy is not explained. So that He may bring you all together to the day of resurrection, about which there is no doubt. Those who ruin their own souls will not believe. And so it seems clear the people who reject Allah are ruining their own souls. It's not that He's doing it. Chapter 9, verse 70, in the same way, says, hasn't the fame of those before them reached them? The people of Noah, Ad, Tamud, the people of Abraham, the dwellers of Midian, and the disasters, their messengers came to them with proofs. So Allah surely did not wrong them, but they wronged themselves. So this seems to make perfect sense, right? The unbeliever sins, and he is punished. That's it. They wronged themselves. Chapter 30, verse 9, in the same way. Haven't they traveled in the land and seen the fate of those who were before them? They were stronger than them in power, and they dug the earth and built upon it more than those have built. Messengers of their own came to them with clear proofs. Surely Allah did not wrong them, but they wronged themselves. Now, other passages say that actually it's Satan who leads believers astray. And so, of course, those things go together. There's no real problem there. A believer can choose to listen to Satan and thus go astray. And so you can say he wronged himself by listening to Satan. So Satan says in chapter 4, verse 119, and surely I will lead them astray, and surely I will arouse desires in them, and surely I will command them, and they will cut the cattle's ears, and surely I will command them, and they will change Allah's creation. Whoever chooses Satan for a patron instead of Allah is indeed a loser, and his loss is clear. And there are other passages in the same vein. But still other passages of the Quran, as well as indications from Islamic tradition, state that no one believes in Allah unless Allah wills it. And also, no one can disbelieve in Allah except by His active will. Now we find this in the same chapter 6, verse 25, the same chapter that said that they brought their trouble upon themselves. It also says, among them are some people who listen to you, but we have placed veils upon their hearts so that they may not understand, and in their ears a deafness. If they saw every sign, they would not believe in them, to the point that when they come to you to argue with you, the unbelievers say, this is nothing other than fables of the men of old. So notice the unbelievers who go to the Muslims and say this is just fables of the men of old, they're only doing it because Allah placed a veil on their hearts. Otherwise, they wouldn't. Now that's remarkable, but it is repeated several times in the Quran. Chapter 10, verse 100. It is not for any soul to believe except by the permission of Allah. He has set uncleanness upon those who have no sense. So you see, people who are unclean, it is because they do not have the permission of Allah to believe. It's very clear. Chapter 16, verse 93 says, if Allah had willed, he could have made you one nation, but he leads astray those whom he wills and guides those whom he wills. And you will indeed be asked about what you used to do, which is kind of strange, really, when you think about it. Why will they be asked about what they used to do if it's Allah who led them astray? If Allah led them astray, then it's not their fault what they used to do. It's Allah's. But nonetheless, he's going to ask them about it. Chapter 24, verse 40. Or a darkness on a vast abysmal sea. There covers him a wave, above which is a wave, above which is a cloud, layer upon layer of darkness. When he holds out his hand, he can barely see it. And he for whom Allah has not appointed light, for him there is no light. I don't know what could possibly be clearer than that, but maybe it's chapter 32, verse 13, which says, and if we had so willed, we could have given every soul its guidance. But the word from me concerning evildoers took effect, that I will fill Gehenna with the jinn and mankind together. So we could have given every soul its guidance. You read in the New Testament that God desires all men to be saved and come to the knowledge of the truth. This is a stark contrast, an absolute contrast to that. We could have given every soul its guidance, but instead he says, I will fill Gehenna with the jinn and mankind together. There are several other verses in that vein, but they make it clear that everything is in Allah's hands, even the decision of the individual to obey him or not. And even when you encounter unbelievers who are full of opposition to Islam, it's by the will of Allah. And yet human beings, for no discernible reason, will still be held accountable for the things they have done. Yet those who've rejected Allah, according to these passages of the Quran, do so because he made it possible for them to do nothing else. Ibn Kathir, the great commentator on the Quran, says these ayat indicate that whomever Allah has written to be miserable, they shall never find anyone to guide them to happiness. And whomever Allah directs to misguidance, he shall never find anyone to guide him. So it's all up to Allah. So that would seem to contradict the passages that state or suggest that it is the believer who wrongs himself, or rather the unbeliever, the sinner, I should say, who wrongs himself, and not Allah who wrongs him. It seems actually very clear in these other passages of the Quran that it is Allah who wrongs him. So how are we to resolve this contradiction? This has been something that has been a preoccupation of Muslims throughout history. And actually in early Islamic history, a party known as the Qadariyya, a faction within the Islamic community, is said to have tried to advance the idea of individual free will. They actually said that the idea that Allah controls everything, even the disbelief of the disbelievers, was an unworthy conception of Allah. So they were saying, we are giving you a higher vision of Allah, that Allah would not lead people astray and send them into hell just on his whim. He wouldn't do that. He would be merciful, as he always says in 113 of 114 chapters of the Quran. He would not wrong the disbelievers, but they wrong themselves. This is what the Qadariyya argued. But their opponents battled them on the basis of the Quranic passages that I read just now, and others like them. that say that no one can disbelieve in Allah except by his active will, that we could have given everyone his guidance, but instead we will fill hell with jinns and men. And it was the opponents of the Qadariyah who won. The Qadariyah were declared heretics. And so these Islamic apologists who are appearing in the Quran study that Hatun and I are doing, they don't realize it, but they are heretics. I suppose it's possible that they might realize it and they're deceivers, but it's more likely that they are, as Hatun said in the segment that we just videoed recently, that they are longing for a God who is better than the Allah in the Quran. They're looking for a God who doesn't damn people and torture them just for fun, but wants all men to be saved and come to the knowledge of the truth. And so they're imposing that view on the Quran so as to make it bearable to believe in. But that's not a Quranic concept, or at least not, I should say, not an Islamic concept. It's been declared heretical in Islamic tradition. A 12th century Muslim jurist, Ibn Abi Yalla, fulminated that the Qadariyah wrongly consider that they hold in their grasp the ability to do good and evil, avoid harm and obtain benefit, obey and disobey, and be guided or misguided. They claim that human beings retain full initiative without any prior status within the will of Allah for their acts, nor even in his knowledge of them. He said their doctrine is similar, and this was the worst thing as far as this guy was concerned. Their doctrine is similar to that of the Zoroastrians and Christians. It is the very root of heresy. And I'll submit to you that's Ibn Abi Yalla was absolutely right. That is the Christian idea, that God is good and does not desire the death of the sinner. And that is one of the primary differences between Islam and Christianity. Thank you.